In this week's edition, is the private vocational education sector targeted for annihilation? New South Wales opens and updates its 491 sponsorship requirements. What happens when you lodge for PR but you lose your job while holding that 494 visa? And the Department of Home Affairs gets a red card for its rudderless leadership. Hi, I'm Karl Konrad and welcome to this week's edition of Australian Immigration News. This program is proudly brought to you by Australian Immigration Law Services, the company I founded in Sydney more than 26 years ago. In an ironic twist this week, there was a perfect example about how jumping on the illegal migrant bashing bandwagon is not the most brilliant move when your past of obeying visa laws was not first class. Elon Musk's reputation took a battering when the government disclosed that he had breached his student visa conditions and worked illegally.
Well, that wealthiest man in the world turned out to be a legal worker here when he was here.
More relevantly, New South Wales has opened its 491 visa pathways 1 and 3 with some significant changes. For pathway 1, working for a regional New South Wales employer, New South Wales has now removed the requirement of living in New South Wales, but you still must have been working in regional New South Wales for a regional employer for at least 6 months. In the government newsletter it states, "We removed the requirement to live in New South Wales for Pathway 1, providing greater flexibility for applicants living in border towns." This change aligns New South Wales with Victoria and the ACT, which both accept that for border towns, it is inevitable that some people may live close by interstate but work in their states. Remember, they are only talking about border towns, however, such as Albury-Wodonga, which straddles the Murray River separating both states. Is the vocational education sector of Australia being deliberately annihilated by the current government? With a student visa refusal rate of over 45% for the first quarter of this financial year, it is difficult not to reach this conclusion. Imagine this for a moment. You are running a vocational school and servicing the recent high number of intakes for their courses, often 2-year programs. Then, suddenly, you lose about a third of your intake, given that the usual refusal rate is about 10 to 20%. Your income coming into the business is going to take a huge hit. But it's not just about the high refusal rate. The number of student visa applications lodged in the vet sector is back to levels nearly a decade ago, and just under half that of the last 2 financial years. For the first quarter of this financial year, just 21,109 applications were lodged and only 12,279 were granted. For the 22-23 financial year, 128,334 visas were granted, and the last financial year it had already been cut to just 55,044. This financial year, at the current decline rate, it'll probably just be about 40,000. It is a double whammy punch by the government. Not only were record low applications lodged, but there is now a record refusal rate on those lower numbers. If this rate continues, the sector may disappear entirely, except for the government-run programs such as TAFE. Is this the sort of power we want governments to yield? Does the government want to take over the vet sector altogether? Make no mistake about it, this is a deliberate genocide of our vet private education sector, just at a time we are struggling to find tradespeople to build these houses we hear Australia desperately needs. According to the statistics, the higher education sector is also suffering. They have a 79% grant rate, which is amazing compared to the vet sector, but is a historically low figure since records have begun in 2006. It still reminds me of the public comment from our education minister that I still can't get out of my head.
In the last year, there's been a 160% jump in the number of students coming to Australia from India. 160%. Think about that.
The irony of this boast at the University Gala in 2023 is that Indian students have predominantly felt the brunt of these high refusal rates. So much for looking after our mates. Our de facto Immigration Minister, Matthew Thistlethwaite, made a speech this week outlining the government's migration plan for a better Australian future. Remember, the government has been in power for nearly 3 years now, and ever since they arrived, they have claimed they have inherited a broken migration system. In his speech to the MIA Migration Conference this week, he stated, "Migration policies have lacked direction and purpose, and migration has been unresponsive to Australia's needs." Well, that's because the DOHA juggernaut has been somewhat unresponsive itself, according to an internal capability review. In an FOI released this week, it revealed this unflattering assessment. The previous command and control leadership style has not encouraged leaders to collaborate and prioritize whole department strategy, setting and execution. Without a clear, cohesive strategy, the department is poorly positioned to foresee, plan and prepare for future challenges and opportunities. The previous command and control leadership style has not encouraged leaders to collaborate? I wonder who that could be. Oh well, it will come to me later. So, is this government in a position to deliver on fixing the migration system? Well, they have made some positive adjustments, that is true, like giving 6 months between sponsored employment, more assistance to domestic violence sufferers, and opening the pathway to PR for 482 visa holders. But they have also made some shockingly disastrous decisions, such as discriminatory age cap on the 485 visa, going back on their promise of longer 485 visas, and ceasing thousands of 476 visa applicants midstream. But that didn't stop them slipping thousands of visas to their mates in India and the Pacific. The new upcoming skills in demand visa is touted by the Assistant Minister to fix our labour shortages, and he said, "For too long, labour shortages have been a handbrake on growth, with businesses unable to flourish due to the unavailability of this skilled labour needed to drive expansion." But the sad reality is that for most occupations it will be as complex as the current 482 visa, except for some business class, high-flying, highly paid IT professionals. The occupations we really need to be here quickly require flying economy and waiting in line. Most of the speech the minister gave to the MIA this week was just a cut and paste of the briefing paper handed to him when he took over the position. You can read this for yourselves in the FOI released on the department's website this week. We will leave a link in the description of this video. When visa applicants lodge the 191 permanent residency visa application after holding their 494 or 491 visa for 3 years, they still must comply with the conditions of their temporary visas. Once their PR is granted, of course, they can do as they please, but until then they have to meet those conditions. For 494 visa holders, well, that involves keeping working for a sponsoring employer in a regional area. So what happens when you lose that employer? Yes, the department has been generous and given 6 months to find a new one, but when the processing time for the 191 visa has now blown out to 7 months and more, that 6 months is gone in a flash. And what employer in their right mind will sponsor someone who has already lodged permanent residency? Absolutely none. One of our viewers called Pursue wrote in and expressed his concerns with the 191 processing times getting longer, and he lost his job while holding the 494 visa, but has already lodged his PR 191 application. Officially now, the time for the 191 visa processing is 7 months of 50% of the applications and 8 months for 90%. Prasu writes in and says, "Hi sir, can you please raise the issue of 494 visa holders? I already applied for the 191 and lost my job due to the employer exploitation and stress. Now I have only some weeks left to find a sponsor or to leave Australia. For the past 4.5 months I am trying, but nobody wants to sponsor a person who already applied for permanent residency and less time left on the visa. I am with my family and have applied for permanent residency and have a bridging visa. Please raise this issue." One of our viewers wrote to the Immigration Minister pleading with him to process his PR faster as he lost his employment. And yes, as you guessed it, it came back with, "Well, bad luck, we couldn't care less. You'll have to leave Australia and wait for your visa to be granted." After dedicating themselves for so many years working and living in a regional area with family and kids in school, they must be kidding. The children have practically grown up here and many would have actually been born here. But no, off you go and we don't care. And yet again, we are dealing with a heartless government, devoid of the flexibility in their management to see when things are not right and to correct the system. This is a developing issue we will be focusing on and pushing the government for a better outcome. Relief for 494 visa holders, that condition after they lodge their 191 visa can be eased. Well, that's all for another busy weekend. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, so we can reach that magic 100,000 subscriber mark before Christmas. If you need help, we are always here, so please book an appointment online or just pick up the phone if you're in a hurry. As always, take care out there, and I'll see you next time. So bye for now.